welcome back to Scream Queen Stream. I'm Jessica Cameron. By this point, you all know Solomon, who is taking over this interview by force. So we're going to hold him so that he's just not barking the entire time, because he is in a mood. And today, we are joined by the lovely, the endlessly talented Miss Trista Robinson.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so very much for coming on.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sally.
So you're going to kick off our Women in Horror Month, which is obviously the month of February. Something that I really like to do is shine the light on other people, other women in the genre industry who are not like necessarily the ones out there on the forefront waving the flag, getting, trying to get noticed a lot. And you're somebody who is so endlessly talented that, again, always shocks me that more people don't know you by name, because I feel like you should. I first came across you as an actress in the 2013 film The Human Race, which was directed by Paul Ho. And you actually played a deaf woman.
Yeah.
Brilliantly.
Thank you.
Brilliantly well. If you haven't seen that movie, it's great. But we'll get into The Human Race in a minute. I want to know, how did you get your start into acting?
My aunt was an actress in Pittsburgh. She did a lot of theater. And I went to live with her in high school, senior year of high school. And I just started doing plays with her, and she started drilling me on monologues, and I really loved it. And I had always had a soft spot for horror. I grew up watching horror with my dad as a kid, so I was able to marry those two things.
Do you remember what the first horror movie was that you watched?
I do, yeah. It was Child's Play, the original.
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, me too. And after the movie, the next morning, I had a doll. It wasn't a Chucky doll, but it resembled Chucky. And my dad threw it in the trash, actually, because he was scared.
Oh. I love that he encouraged the horror movie fandom, but was concerned about the doll.
Yeah. Well, to me, anything that could have that profound of an effect on my dad was pretty powerful,
But even then, as a child, you weren't like, this is what I want to do when I grow up.
No, I actually didn't. I just knew that the best times of my life were spent watching horror on the couch with my dad.
That is such a wonderful memory.
Thanks, yeah. It was very innocent and special. It made him really happy. It's so funny. Sometimes I meet people and they're shocked that I do horror, and some people are offended by horror. But for me, it's a very innocent, special time in my life. Maybe the best times in my life.
I love that. I love that. So did you specifically seek out working in the genre, or did it just kind of happen?
It all seems very fateful. I did not specifically seek it out. I started acting with my aunt, and then I went to a conservatory in New York, which is where I'm from, and I loved horror, obviously, for the reasons I just explained. It's very close to my heart. But at this conservatory, we studied classics. People did not talk about horror. It wasn't taken seriously. And I was a little embarrassed about my love of horror. And then I came to LA, and I started auditioning and meeting filmmakers. And we have an amazing horror community here. And that's what I started booking. And those are the people I started gravitating towards. And then it felt very freeing to be open about what I love, and then have all of these talented people that love the same thing. So, but it wasn't intentional. It feels so fateful to me. It's very odd.
No, I have a very similar experience. So I do think like sometimes the genre finds you.
Really? You have a similar experience?
Yeah, like I just wanted to work. Originally, when I left my job, I was like, I just hopefully want to book work, and by fluke, I just started booking all the genre stuff.
And you already had a love.
Oh, I loved it. It was my favorite thing to watch. I just never consciously decided I'm going to be a horror actress. It just sort of happened. Even like now, when I submit to stuff, I still submit to other things. I do book other types of work, but the amount of horror far supersedes everything else. I have also found that I prefer horror sets, because I find that like every single person on a genre movie set is almost always a fan. at the very least, they greatly respect it. So, like, your DP and your special effects people, obviously, but, like, even your AD and your, like, grips and the electrics and all of those, like, they just would not want to be anywhere else. And I find, like, that love I haven't seen on a comedy set or on a drama set. I find, like, on those sets, I find people are more likely to be in the mindset of, I'm doing this for a job. I like it. It's fine. But it's like, it's a job. It's not because I would rather not be doing it. Versus in genre, I feel like it's typically people that if you weren't paying them or paying them a lot less, they'd still be there.
Oh, yeah. There's so much passion.
Mm-hmm. So you went from just, you know, studying into acting and the transition to LA. Let's talk about that, because LA can be kind of a hard nut to crack. And that's something that I get asked a lot. So I'm curious, like, what was your experience transitioning into the LA scene? What maybe worked for you? What maybe didn't? What would you say to other actors or artists wanting to come out?
Yeah, LA is not easy. I would never tell anyone to move here and be an actor. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. You know, I'm sure you get the same thing. People constantly hit me up and say, like, oh, how can I be in a movie? Or, I love movies. Can you put me in something? And the truth is that I just make a lot of sacrifices because it's worth it to me. And I'll just keep doing it, you know. I know a lot of people that move and say, like, well, if I haven't worked by this law, give themselves a time, or a amount of money, or those sorts of goals, which is very smart. But I've still got this sort of, just like, I'm going to do it no matter what, you know. I can't help it. So I would say it's very hard. But when you love something, you make sacrifices and you make it work. So I don't think there's any one way to say, do this. For me, I also work in other genres besides horror. But most of my friends are very talented horror filmmakers. And that's predominantly how I work. And I would say that might be the most important thing to do, is surround yourself, if you can, by talented people with similar goals, who care about the same things that you do. Because when those other jobs are far and few between, or sparse, I've still got a bunch of people that are like-minded and are working hard. And it doesn't feel so lonely that way. I really think the plight of the filmmaker and that of the actor are not dissimilar.
I completely agree. I believe it was Will Smith who said something, and I'm not going to say that quote, but effectively that not to have a plan B. And I think he likened it to a treadmill, I believe, where he was like, it's like if I'm on a treadmill and I want to outrun the guy next to me, there is no, I'm not going to do it. I'm either going to outrun him or I'm going to die. Like, there's two ways this ends for me. I'm either going to do the thing that I said I was going to do, or I'm going to die trying to do the thing I said I was going to do. So I think that that's a really good mentality. Obviously, it's not for everyone, but I also say, if you need a backup plan, then go do that. Like, the best advice I ever received, which I want to know the best advice you ever received, but the best advice I received was, if there's anything else in your mind or in your heart and soul that you'd be happy with doing, go do it. Because this will be by far the most difficult, the most challenging, with the least financial payoff. And so few people can sustain it for any amount of time. And that has sort of stuck with me. Like, if ever there's anything else, I'm like, oh yeah, I would be happy doing this, I'm absolutely going to just stop and go do that. And I also have a lot of friends who are perfectly happy being, I call them hobbyist filmmakers, and I say that without a negative connotation. So I'm not meaning it in a derogatory term, where they work 9 to 5 or Monday through Friday, a normal job, and then they make movies on evening and weekends. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that if that's what makes you happy, right? Like, some people need a steady paycheck. Some people need, you know, to know that they're going to go in, they're going to do a job that somebody else is going to tell them what to do for the most part, go home, and they can leave the job there. And that's okay. I think you just sort of have to know, like, are you that artist who's okay with the struggle, having the more flexible schedule, but that comes with the cost of not having a consistent income, not knowing where the next job is going to be? Or are you the type where you need that consistency, at which point you might not have the flexibility to audition all the time, you might not have the desperate need to book a gig the way that others do. So going into that, though, I want to know, what is your best advice that you've ever received?
Well, first of all, thanks for saying all that, because a lot of times this job, it really can be sort of lonely and daunting and hard and rewarding. But to hear someone else talk about what I go through on a daily basis is comforting, because I feel like most people, obviously most of my friends are filmmakers, so most of the people I surround myself can relate. But I do feel like the average person makes different choices, which sometimes seem like better choices, but I just am afflicted by this situation, and I can't do that. But it's always comforting to hear other people talk about.
Likewise, you're not the only one.
Sacrifices we make, yeah.
Especially with social media, because like people forget that social media is a highlight reel. Like that's really what it is. Social media is not like a look into someone's life. It is a glimpse at the greatest moments that they are curating and making seem better typically than what they actually are in real life to the public. Like it's not your actual real life.
I agree with that. And to piggyback on that, I think there's something beautiful about vulnerability that is lacking from that. Not that social media is bad, and I know you're particularly adept at it.
I love it.
And I respect that about you. But it's very handy in connecting people, but there is something beautiful in vulnerability. And I think that is something, I think film is often about empathy, even genre film. I think I try to bring vulnerability to my roles, and I think people appreciate that. And sometimes that can be hard to obtain via social media. But the best advice I've ever received, this is what I'm gonna go with. It was a long time ago, a couple years back, when I was in conservatory, we had to write an essay about what it meant, why we wanted to be an actor. And I stayed up all night, and at the time my roommates were my friends, and they were partying, and they were really bummed that I wanted to write this essay. But I stayed up all night, and I sort of ignored them, and they wanted me to join them, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote about why I wanted to be an actor and what it meant to me, fiercely. And then I got to class the next day, and I had all of these pages that I had just labored over, and it got to be my turn. We were going around in a circle, and people were reading what they wrote. And I stood up, and I had all these pages, and I just put them down, and I just said, I want to be an actor because acting is better than not acting. And my friends that were my roommates were so confused because they knew I had written all of this stuff, and they were like, that's it? They expected me to extrapolate because I had this huge essay. And then the teacher sort of took me aside, and he was like, you're screwed. And I think that was the best advice I'd ever received. I was like, I am screwed.
Thank you so very much for watching. If you liked this video, hit the like button down below and also subscribe. We produce new videos every week. Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview. Also, bonus points if you join our Patreon because it helps keeps the light on. Literally, we need lights.